Welcome everyone to webinar series after a very long break. Before we begin, we would like to thank all our partners and battery makers who had participated at our booth at the battery show in Stuttgart and share their expertise and challenges in the industry. We would like to thank all visitors who took time and came to our booth to listen to the expert talks, evening event, and made the battery show Stuttgart event successful for batteryline.com. So let's head towards today's webinar. So today's webinar is on powder handling in gigafactories, where we are thrilled to have Mr. Richard Lockwood from Matcon, who will be sharing their expertise and insights on this crucial topic. Richard, we thank you for joining us today.
No, thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Richard, now we request you to introduce about Matcon to our audience.
Okay, if we just start by just taking a moment to look at who Matcon are, just give you a bit of an overview. Obviously, to set the scene, we were the original cone valve inventors. We'll talk about the cone valve in a little bit, but it's a device for promoting the flow of difficult materials and preventing segregation. But we'll touch on that throughout the course of the webinar. But we were the first to produce that product. We have a global coverage. We're headquartered in the UK, but we do have sales, commercial, and service operations focusing on Americas, on Europe, and the emerging markets, where we have both a commercial and a manufacturing presence as well as service. We have a dedicated aftermarket focus, so it's not just a case of we supply the equipment. We have a team of people around the world dedicated to supporting that. It's actually run as a separate business line within the overall Matcon organization. And I guess that the last point, which is whilst maybe not seem relevant sometimes to battery, is the range of industries that we have worked in. We have been in the powder handling business for 45 years, working along all different industries: food, pharmaceutical, infant nutrition, sports nutrition, chemical. All of those have challenges with powders, and you'd be surprised how similar they are actually to what we're starting to see emerging in the battery market. So whilst it may feel as the industry is starting out on this journey of discovery and growth, as the world switches towards electric vehicles and electric storage, Matcon have kind of been there before. We've seen that, so we have that experience that we can help you. So that's a little bit about Matcon. We can go from there.
Okay. Thank you very much, Richard, for introducing Matcon. So let's dive into the Q&A session directly. Richard, where in the battery line or what battery technology does Matcon specialize in?
Okay, great. So obviously what we can see there is, a general sort of flow through of what the battery industry is. Currently, our major focus is around the battery material plants and electrode manufacturing. So cathode active materials and those companies taking that and producing cells. We are starting to see a little bit of interest from the recycling industry, particularly now as more companies are starting to look to convert black mass into viable products within the European Union and the UK and in North America. So that's becoming more of a challenge. But generally, we're used throughout the manufacturing process, both in the battery active material plants and in electrode manufacturing, where the equipment allows for quick and efficient transfers of materials between process steps, whilst maintaining a good level of hygiene, dust control, and containment within that. Everything that we do is built around leveraging our intermediate bulk containers with our proprietary cone valve technology in it. And the beauty of that is, and what we're seeing is the need for flexibility and the need for, as factories get larger and as businesses grow, the flexibility is required. And quite often you just can't get that same sort of quick transfers and changeovers without using IBCs.
Coming to the next question, What are the primary challenges associated while handling and storage of battery raw materials in gigafactories, and how MatCon addresses these issues?
So we'll look at more around sort of the solutions that Matcon can bring to that. But if we think about the battery industry at the very highest level, ultimately, whether you're making active materials or you're making cells themselves, the powders themselves are complex. They're very fine powders. They can be quite toxic. They can have irregular shapes and sizes. So from a quality control perspective, ensuring that right first time solution and getting good quality materials through the factories is paramount. Clearly, there are quite severe consequences if quality control is allowed to sort of to slip. So we are enabling and improving the way that people can produce and manufacture whilst raising that quality control. We'll come to the powder handling issues in a moment. I think that's a deeper topic, but we think about the process efficiency and scaling up. I think that's probably where our experience in the other industries that we work with over the years will really help the battery market. We think about a typical process whereby raw materials are received in super sacks and FIBCs and then transferred into processes. That process could be into a slurry mixer in electrode production, or that could be into reactors or other forms of tanks and processing in the active material market. At a small scale, the challenges associated with handling those containers or those sacks really don't pose a challenge to the operation and the financial success of the business. But as companies grow and as the businesses get larger, all of those inefficiencies that sort of exhibit themselves within those processes become more of a challenge. So that time it would take to tip powder into a process, time it takes to change over FIBCs, just the sheer volume of powder becomes a problem. So by replacing that and looking to move away from manual handling at that stage and replacing that with rigid IBCs with cone valve technology, we can really start to remove some of those bottlenecks that exist within the manufacturing process and allow perhaps people to optimize a process rather than simply just replicating that. I think a lot of the time as people, as companies grow, their scale up, the answer is often just to replicate what they have already, just build another parallel line. But by building a parallel line, by adding that extra line, yes, you get the capacity, yes, you get the scale, but you're also adding to overhead, you're adding to cost, but also any of the challenges or inefficiencies which were in that process in the first place, you're simply replicating that and tying yourselves to that for the rest of the factory's life of producing that material. We come to the powder handling issue. I think, and again, this comes sort of hand in hand with scale. Matcon have been overcoming powder handling problems for 45 years. That's our bread and butter of what we do. So if we think about at the smaller scale, when we think of keeping dust inside process, at a smaller scale, maybe you can use isolators, glove boxes, things like that. You don't have to be too concerned about that containment. But then we think about as material volumes get larger and powders get more the bigger weights, the powder won't flow in the same way that it did at the lab scale or even at the pilot scale. So what wasn't a difficult flowing powder when you had 5 or 6 kilos of it in a bowl and a bucket on your lab bench will become a challenge when you're trying to discharge 1, 2, 3 tons of that material into that process. So what I would say is that by looking at that future state and where you're looking to get to, rather than simply replicating what you've already done and then discovering there are problems, have the conversations with a reputable OEM and discuss how best we can solve those problems. We do know, for instance, that whilst maybe we talk about the powder mix segregation, that might not be a challenge if you've only got a single material which you're discharging into a process. But actually, the way in which that powder maybe has particle size differences, the segregation may not be of different materials, but of different particle sizes. And that will then influence the way that the next process perhaps receives and works with that, that powder. As I said, the cone valve, it's designed to prevent rat holding, prevent that powder bridging by actually actively moving up into the material and adding energy to that powder to make sure that it does actually flow. We can prevent segregation by preventing what would normally be seen as a core flow out of containers, out of processes. And I think the other thing which comes as standard with all of the MatCon solutions is a dust-free powder transfer. And we talk about that scale up. We can take a similar kind of process from a few hundred liters up to over 3,500 liters in volume. So you think about you're starting that journey into either large volume active manufacturing or material handling within electrode production. Certainly, being able to take the learnings and grow with the same solution as we go through the process is definitely key to that.
Thank you, Richard, for mentioning those challenges which might come up from lab scale to giga scale, and also how you, as MatCon, solve those challenges using IBCs and your expertise from the past. Coming to the next question, what key advice would you like to offer to battery manufacturers to efficiently handle powders for mass production in a gigafactory level?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Vikram. I mean, it's a great question. I mean, I touched on it just before. I think the one thing to think about is look at investing in a well-designed system that's going to give you flexibility, that's going to give you something to grow with. If you were to invest in a solution which is, you're already at the limits of its capabilities today, should the R&D team, should the technical teams come up with a different way or a different method of doing things, the likelihood is that you will find the limits of that system far sooner. The MatCon IBC system, it's a phrase that is often thrown around quite readily, but future-proofing the business. The expectation would be that you would find the limit of a simple butterfly valve, slide valve system, FIBC system, far sooner than you would find the limits of the powder handling capabilities of a MatCon cone valve. So you're investing in a process that will give you an opportunity to grow and to scale that. I think also, and we'll maybe touch on it later on, is work with a partner that is able to offer advice, that's able to share experience about how best to do that. I mean, yes, the battery materials that the companies are producing are not the same as we've been working with across sports nutrition, across infant nutrition and pharma over the years. But if we take away what that chemical name is, does the material flow? Does it not flow? Does it create a bridge or rat hole when you're trying to discharge it? There are countless examples we could draw on where we've seen that already, or the powder mix will segregate. So I do think it's not just about finding a solution, but it's finding a partner that you can work with to actually look beyond the first phase of the process, but then finding that way that you can then start to grow and develop and actually have a product and a solution partner that can grow with you.
Coming to the next question. So sustainability is a crucial concern across all manufacturing sectors. So what measures has MatCon implemented to ensure the energy efficiency and sustainability of your solutions?
Okay, thanks, Brett. So obviously, in addition to our own efforts that we're making internally to make our process less energy intensive and more sustainable, we're working with our R&D teams and with our product development to make solutions which allow for a different way of working. If we, I think, move on to the next slide, we look at the two latest developments that we have in that area. Whilst not directly impacting on Matcon's sort of environmental impact. It will allow our customers, our clients to make improvements. That left-hand side you see there is our high temperature discharge station IBC, designed for handling high temperature powders, where historically in a lot of industry and applications, materials would be delivered hot from a process and often left to cool before being transferred and then heated back up again. Obviously creating the demand for both cooling and heating again. So from a sustainability point of view, this new technology will allow companies to only cool material if they need to, but also maybe cool that material less than they would ordinarily. We can have that powder discharging through the process at up to 200 degrees Celsius. So if we're taking an anode material out of a furnace at several hundred, 900 degrees or whatever, the size of the cooling equipment required to get that down to ambient compared to getting that down to 200 degrees, it's going to save hundreds of thousands of euros in capex, not to mention the ongoing operational costs, size of cooling plants and all that, plus the environmental footprint that goes with that. So clearly that's one area. On the other side, what we see there is our pilot blender. Now, what we're looking to do here is to replicate our larger IBC blending systems, but at a smaller scale. So customers can get a proof of concept using a smaller amount of material, which has cost obviously less energy, less minerals, materials to produce. So the initial impact of that batch of powder blending is smaller. So what that means from a pilot scale, from a lab or R&D setup, is that customers can iterate several variations of a concept of a recipe at a small scale and prove that it works or not without having to waste thousands of kilos of material. So that pilot IBC starts at 50 liters through to 200 liters. So again, we can get the solutions into our customers for them to prove that their chemistry, their solution is viable before scaling. And obviously, because we've scaled down from our full size system, any results that you would see at that pilot scale, we would expect to be replicated at that full scale as well.
Since we have come to the end of this webinar, Richard, is there anything important that our audience should keep in mind about Matcon?
I think one thing that I would say for Matcon is, we are more than just a manufacturer of IBCs. We're more than just an OEM. We want to support our customers with the layout, design, optimization of how to move materials through factories. A lot of our customers are scientists, chemists, very good scientists, very good chemists, have got some very good ideas, but often that first step into manufacturing is something that they're not certain of. We've obviously been there before, as I mentioned on that very sort of first slide we spoke about the industries. We've been there, we've done that across the world, across industries. So I think if you're looking at optimizing powder handling and you're looking at improving that efficiency, then certainly find that partner who can support you along the journey rather than simply delivering equipment to you.
Thank you very much, Richard, for that excellent talk on powder handling in gigafactories. So now we have come to this webinar. Thank you, Richard, for sharing your valuable insights with us today. It's clear that Matcon is at the forefront of powder handling solutions for the battery manufacturing industry, and your expertise is invaluable to our audience. To our attendees today, if you have any further questions or you would like to learn more about Matcon solutions, please visit Matcon's website, or you can reach out to Richard directly, and or else you can write us to at contact@batteryline.com. Thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.